we've been talking about, or at least I've been talking about today's program as the bad person episode of the 0 Hour, or as the Schadenfreude episode when bad things happen to bad people. And we joke about that, and also we do talk about what people are doing wrong out there. And I write about it, as do many others, about the people who are messing things up, and why we should make things better and not worse, and how we should not listen to those people. And the reason why I'm talking about all of this is because I can joke, and we can joke about Schadenfreude. We can joke about bad people and enjoying it when bad things happen to them. But there's one thing that really, really concerns me and bothers me, and that is when our criticism of the people who are mismanaging this country turns into what seems a lot to me like encouragement of violence. Now, I never do that. I am a big believer in nonviolent solutions to all our problems. I do not think that violence is an effective tool for change, unless you're in very different, like, war circumstances or whatever. We're not in that. We have a democratic process. We have much more effective ways to improve the world. So I guess I've been thinking about this for a couple reasons. One is that I wrote a piece in the last week about Jeb Bush, presidential candidate, of course, and the fact that Paul Wolfowitz, who many consider to be the architect of the horrible and failed war in Iraq, is one of his key financial advisors. Now, I wrote a lot about the outrage of what Wolfowitz had done, and the fact that in Washington, D.C. and in the corridors of power, there appears to be no penalty for having been so spectacularly wrong. Remember, Wolfowitz said we would be welcomed as liberators, and the war would only take 2 months, and it would pay for itself, and so on. And now, all these years and trillions of dollars and tragic losses of life later, we know that's not the case. So, yes, I want people to be outraged about Paul Wolfowitz. I want people to be outraged about the lack of accountability in the halls of power. And I want people to be outraged that Jeb Bush, who is only a serious candidate for president because of his family ties, which got him everything he has, is bringing Paul Wolfowitz back. I want that outrage. We need that outrage. We need people to understand how outrageous it is. But here's what really, really bothers me and really, really concerns me. When we get comments, one commenter, this was on the Huffington Post, wrote, and I quote, "No matter how many times I could post Wolfowitz should be shot, it won't bring back the American troops that he and Shrub," meaning Bush the second, President Bush II, sent to their deaths. Now, I don't want anybody talking about anybody being shot, not because of what I say, not because what anybody progressive or on the left says. I think we need to expunge, even in a joking, this guy may be saying there's no point, whatever. I don't want our minds going there. Now, one of the things, here's another one. Somebody wrote a comment on the same piece, where is Sirhan Sirhan? Now, Sirhan Sirhan, for those of you who don't remember, was the guy who assassinated Robert F. Kennedy. Now, look, people, please, this is one of the things I've criticized Sean Hannity for this. You had the guy who went in and killed some Unitarians in I believe it was Kentucky, Tennessee, Knoxville, Tennessee, yeah. And he had Sean Hannity's books on his shelf. He had Goldberg's book, Bernard Goldberg's book on the 100 People Ruining America, and he said he had planned to target those people one by one. Now, one of the things that shocked me about the right when that happened, and it really shocked me, was that the Sean Hannitys of the world didn't come out and do what I'm doing. I'm a much more minor figure, of course, compared to somebody like that, but that they didn't come out and say, look, not my name. Don't read my books and take that message away. Instead, they doubled down. Bill O'Reilly, who we're talking about on this show, Bill O'Reilly talking about, was it O'Reilly? I think one of those guys talked about blowing up Coit Tower in San Francisco because they didn't like the politics of San Francisco. Dick Morris, the hack, who got in a scandal for listening to President Clinton on the phone with his hooker. Dick Morris said, liberals should be have their off with their heads was the name of his book. Conservatives condemn ISIS, and rightly so, for beheadings, but they don't condemn their own for titling a book Off with Their Heads. And Ann Coulter said liberals should be beaten with baseball bats and so on. This is horrific. This is ugly. I want none of that on our side of the fence. Okay, I just want nothing to do with it, and I'm horrified. It reached the point where there was a case in down south where a Democratic activist, their family's pet cat was murdered. The word liberal was carved on the side of the cat, and it was left for the children to find. We're not those people, okay? So let's not go into that place of violence, of seeming to condone violence. Let's condemn it, okay? Let's condemn it, and let's be the people we were meant to be, which is higher-minded, kinder, smarter, wiser, and gentler. Now, there are a couple other stories I want to talk to you just very briefly about before we go on. Number one is this. This was a headline in DealBook in the New York Times. She runs SEC. He's a lawyer. Recusals and headaches ensue. Now, in a lighter-hearted world, this wouldn't be an actual headline. This would be the pitch for a new sitcom. A his and her story about two successful and powerful people in the world. Unfortunately, it's reality. Mary Jo White leads the Securities and Exchange Commission, and there's something about Mary Jo. Her husband, John, practices law at one of the big firms that defends Wall Street bankers. This is wrong. We should not. Mary Jo White herself was once a great prosecutor. She then became a defender of Wall Street banks herself. Look, we got to end the revolving door. So let's concentrate our energies on peacefully encouraging our leaders not to allow the revolving door. A new study, by the way, tells you what you already know. Political scientist Michael J. Barber did a study which showed that he's a professor at Brigham Young University in Utah. He did a study which showed that the interest of donors are overwhelmingly, almost unfailingly, represented by the senators to whom they donate. Now, in other words, the views of the constituents of those senators aren't really represented. The views of the people who give those senators money to run for election and re-election are. You knew that already, but we now have a scientific study which confirms this. At some point in the future, we will ask that gentleman, Mr. Barber, to come on the show and talk to us a little bit more about it. Now, I will just close by saying this. I criticize the way these senators are handling their governance. I criticize the leader of the SEC for these conflicts of interest within her family and her own career, just as I've criticized the Justice Department for that. These are criticisms of people who have a right to live their lives the way they choose, and we have a right to say that's not the right to lead our government. That's the way to disagree. I am Richard RJ Eskow, and this is The Zero Hour.